Hello everyone and welcome to Small Dev Talk's first developer commentary interview. Today I'm here with Niklas Hansson from Defrost Games and a new upcoming game, Project Temporality. So Niklas, what is Project Temporality?
Well, Project Temporality is a third-person time-based puzzle game. We're actually calling it a single-player cooperation game a lot of the time, but not always, because people are a bit confused about it, and we think we have actually gone beyond that. The main goal of the game is actually to make the fourth dimension, time, as accessible to the player as the other three dimensions. So in this example here, you probably saw I had a little timer up at the top of the screen. Let's go back here. And that's basically the time till the door here closes forever on me. So I have inside here, you can see 3 different keys. I need to get all of these out before the door closes. So if we go forward for time a little bit again, we can see that for a single person, that's pretty much impossible. But that's where the core of the gameplay come in. You have the ability to move forward and backward for time, whatever like you want. And whenever and wherever you want to, you can create what you call a new timeline, which is basically a new you that exists parallel to the other one. So let's try that. And you can see the other me running here in front of me. And actually, I was a bit too slow here picking up the key. Lazy me. So let's just do this again. So now he's running behind me instead. And he's now going to go on and repeat all the actions that I did earlier. So he's going to be opening the door here that you could actually see on the small minimap at the top of the game. So this is the core of Temporality, all about manipulating time. And this timeline concept is our absolutely most important part, and everything is built in layers around it, kind of like an onion. That we have one single concept in the middle, but we have a ton of layers around it to make it interesting.
That's actually really interesting. I have a question. How does the rewind time or creating multiple timelines supposed to work in this game? Like, what are the key bindings?
Yeah, for example, now I just referred to go into what we have a time manipulation mode. I press the left mouse button and I enter this time manipulation mode. You can see how everything turns slightly bluish. And that's to allow us to manipulate, show a player easily in which mode it is. And then I can use the A and D buttons to move time backward and forward, and I can do it slowly, and if I keep it pressed, it will go a lot faster. As you can see on the clock up at the top here. And then if I want to enter it and create a new clone, I just press the right mouse button. And you can see here that the earlier me is standing in front of me again and will be repeating all the actions that happened before. The really interesting part is if you look closely, you can see that the old me retains the same color as it did before, and the new me takes a different color. That's because the old you is still the old you. It's not the clone. It's actually the new you, the player that you take control of, that is the clone. And that might sound silly, but it's really important for really grasping why the game works. Because that means it's really natural that the old you will continue to repeat any actions that he did before.
This idea of different clones is a very interesting aspect. What is actually the story in Project Temporality?
The basic setting is that we're like 150 years into the future. Mankind has exploited the natural resources of Earth, and to the point where there's simply not room for us anymore. And in our version of the future, we have not successfully created faster than light travel. So the only alternative for mankind to speed is to find a way to be able to terraform different planets in the solar system. And the interesting part is that there is a theory by a guy named Martin J. Fogg about stellifying Jupiter so that you should be able to make its moons habitable. So it's an actual real science theory. So our game is built in this setting where mankind has polluted the Earth and are moving out to the moons. Also, during this time, mankind invented time travel. And, well, basically we did what we always do when we get a power we can't handle. We used it too much, we almost destroyed the Earth. So the entire Earth is protected now by something called a temporality field that basically stops the paradoxes from tearing it apart. And all time research is, of course, forbidden because of this. So the player is actually in a military research station orbiting Jupiter. And basically, things haven't really gone out really well. The message you see here is from the admiral who commands the station, Admiral Melville, and he was tasked with trying to research an internal time manipulation, like an implant which would allow you to rewind time for like 1 or 2 minutes, give the idea of creating a super soldier that could help clean out the mess on the moons around Jupiter. But he failed. He had like 50 test subjects that were voluntary military subjects, and he ran through them. And he felt he was so close that he wanted to continue and started to take in random people from the station. And you are one of these random people. So you're here in the test, and from the game it seems like you are the first guy with a successful time manipulation implant, but you can't really know. And during the wave, Admiral is trying to perform tests to see if you actually have a working implant or not. And we have a lot of story in the game. You can walk around and read a ton of these journals we have spread through the game, which is telling the more in-depth part of the story that for the player that really is interested in the universe of the story, and for the other persons, they can just listen to Admiral and go through and get a light version of the story.
Wow, that's actually a very different and unique story. I'm actually really impressed. I like that. I notice how you have different type of puzzles where you press the buttons and there's lasers and there's gates. Are there any more type of puzzles? What type of puzzles will we be able to do in the game, and how complicated will they be for the average player?
Well, that's actually a good question. The puzzles on the later stage of the game is getting really complicated, mostly because these clones are not a canned recording. They're not consistent through the same position. If you change the word around, you can actually change where a person exists later in time. And the later levels will use puzzles that require this, and it will be really mind-bending. Another big part is, and that's why I stopped here, we have a thing that is called a temporality field. The same part that hang around Earth, and if you see at the door here in front of you, you can see it has a green shimmer. This is obviously a very place holographical effect. But it means that it's within a temporality field, so when you rewind time, it won't affect it. So if I get in here, I press the door, and oh yeah, the door closes behind me, but that's not a problem. I'm just gonna rewind time a bit, create a clone that gets in and puts it in there, and then I will go through, right? No, the door here is already closed, and no matter how much I rewind time, it will remain closed. And this is one use of temporality fielding, because temporality fielding works with different objects. For example, if a platform is temporality fielded, it means that it will keep moving. No matter if you try to move time backwards, go around or anything, it will keep its movements constant, which makes it really important to make the right decisions, because if you don't, you will only have one shot. Really interesting part is that the only way actually to move around but keeping a temporality fielded platform standing still is to move backwards in time to go to a position you earlier visited. And then we have temporality fielded keys, and those also act differently because you can actually go backwards through time and still keep the key with you. So as you can see here, we don't really have that many different objects in the game, but because we add so many layers of these, can still make the puzzles really complex. So now I'm gonna actually show this. I'm just gonna reset the puzzle here so that the door is open again. And here's actually a really nifty part. I go in here again, and I stopped here just as we started pressing the button. As the button just isn't pressed down yet, it means that the door hasn't started closing yet. So I move backwards again, let him go over there, and then I go quickly inside here. So you really have to think about time and what happens in time and when it happens, especially when dealing with temporality fields.
Wow, that seems a lot more challenging than Portal. Actually leads me to a question. What inspired you to create this spectacular game?
Obviously, Portal is a big inspiration. I can be perfectly honest about that. The other thing I would say as my main inspiration is a game called Cursor 10, which is basically like an online flash game, which allowed you to create multiple clones of yourself, and you have to go through a 10-level turret, and to get to the top levels you have to solve a lot of puzzles, and you have to do that by forcing your different characters to cooperate. So kind of like a single player cooperation, which I also mentioned we are doing. But the thing about that game that really frustrated me was that you had to always start right from the beginning every single time, which means that you have to redo a lot of things when playing the game. And that to me felt a bit tough and non-user friendly. Why should I spend most of my time on the later clones just running through the 5 to 6 levels below? So I thought, what we could do something like that, doing it in a Portal-ish environment style, with a lot more action, first or third person graphics, and solve this problem that the player had to rewind the time, go restart from the start. And that's where our time rewinding mechanism came from. We wanted to go to any place in time and start doing anything at that point. So we could just, if it was a simple puzzle, we just have to go backward a little bit. You shouldn't need to restart the level. You just go back a little bit, fix that mistake, and then continue on.
Interesting. I know how your game, Project Temporality, is actually on Steam Greenlight. If your game becomes greenlit, will you be using Steam's features such as workshops to let people create custom puzzles?
Custom puzzles might be a bit hard simply because it's quite an involved process of creating a map. We might try to do some kind of simple method for people to create the map. At the moment, you build the basic level. You build in Maya or Max or Softimage or Blender. And then you go from the in-game level editor to actually place all the props, create all the puzzles, put in the lasers, change the walls. You don't need to sit in Maya to decide exactly what wall. If you can see here, we have some walls with alcoves in and some not, and that's all done in our internal level editor. But it's still a two-step process, and because we're using XNA, it's a bit more fudgy than we would like to, and it is possible to go around that if there is enough interest, but at the moment our plan is not to support that out of the box. It's the same as with co-op multiplayer, which we have gotten a request on, which we think would be a really cool thing to do. And if there's interest and people buy the game, we'll definitely look into ways of adding those things on and afterwards. But for the moment, we're trying to really hard to get this game out and get it released ready, as we've been working for it for almost 3 years by now.
Okay, that leads me to one of the two final questions. What is the expected release date of Project Temporality, and how much do you plan to be cost?
We're planning an October release this year on whatever platforms we can get out on at that time. For a cost issue, it's always a bit of sensitive because obviously we want to talk with the digital platforms holders that actually sell the game, because these are the guys who knows the best what is the proper thing to charge. But we are looking at $10 to $15 for the game. We think $15 is a perfectly reasonable cost for a game with these high production values.
Amazing. And the last question I have is, do you have anything to say to our listeners?
Yeah, we really hope you have enjoyed watching Temporality and that you have as great time watching it as we have had creating it. And we hope you want to support us on Greenlight and our current Indiegogo campaign. Of course, it's really important for us. If we can just get a little bit more money there, we can exchange all these text boxes with proper voice acting, and that will make the game a lot better. So if you're actually thinking of buying it, be sure to get in and support us now so you can make the game all it can be for your sake.
Thank you. And everyone, that was Niklas Hansson from Defrost Games showing off his amazing and fantastic looking game, Project Temporality. Thank you for listening.